My name is Carter Hayes, and today I'm doing my final research rehearsal presentation for the Metrodome roof collapse. And so I'm going to start with the case narrative, which started in April of 2010, where the Metropolitan Sports Facilities Committee, which is a committee in the metropolitan area that basically oversees all big facilities such as the Metrodome and other stadiums in that area, went to the Metrodome, and they saw that the inner lining at this dome was actually pretty old, pretty worn out, and needed to be repaired. But instead of telling engineers to repair them, they told them not to due to cost concerns and time concerns and just not wanting to spend the money and hoping that the things the engineers put into place would hold instead of replacing the lining. And then later that year, in December of 2010, a snowstorm that brought about 14 to 17 inches of snow to the metropolitan area hit the dome and covered the entire roof in snow. This led to there being major concerns for the collapse of the roof to happen, and that they really thought it might. And so, in order to combat this, they tried to send a group of 6 men onto the roof with like massive snow plows and just shovels and stuff, basically to try and remove snow manually because they didn't have any on-site tools to do so, really. And so this basically led to the men realizing they couldn't do much to the snow, and so they left. And then a few hours later, around 5:30 a.m. that night, a section of the roof collapsed. Now, some major decisions that led to this collapse and that happened in this case were that the engineers, when building it, put in 20 fans to basically create air pressure in order to support the lining of the roof, and that basically supports things like the snow and keeps it from collapsing. And they saw these 20 fans as enough to combat anything they were up against, and didn't decide to put any on-site tools to help remove excess snow in the case of a major snowstorm or in the case of an extreme like this snowstorm that hit them. And this led to there not being enough time to get things, and them having to risk the lives of 6 men up on the roof, and then eventually leading to the collapse of the entire roof. Another major decision that happened was that the Metropolitan Sports Facilities Committee, when seeing that the inner lining was damaged and weak, they decided to not repair it. Whereas if they had, it would have led to there being a more sturdy structure, and that the fans might have actually been able to support it with the help of the new inner lining instead of the old and fragile one. Now, motivating values by these engineers are ones of job security and profit. They saw that if they didn't listen to this major sports facilities committee, they might lose jobs in the future due to them having such a wide reach in the metropolitan area. And they also saw a chance to make a lot of profit due to not having to put on more on-site tools in order to remove snow, but instead they could have just relied on the 20 fans and hoped that they did their job instead of putting in more expensive on-site things. So that brings me to value analysis of this case. The first thing is that there are many better decisions that these engineers and the Metropolitan Sports Committee could have made. A big one is that the engineers should not have listened to the Metropolitan Sports Facilities Committee. Instead, they should have put on-site tools in order to help remove the snow, some sort of machine to do it, instead of having to risk the lives of men to go up there and hopefully move it before the roof actually collapsed. They should have not just relied on the 20 fans, and instead they should have prepared for an extreme such as 14 to 17 inches of snow. They should have prepared for that extreme snowstorm, because that way, if they do that, any other smaller snowstorms are going to be basically non-existent to them due to them being prepared for the most extreme conditions possible. Another major decision that should have changed was the replacing inner lining decision. They should have actually replaced it instead of going for something that they thought would save money. They should have just dealt with it, spent the money, replaced the lining, and that the engineers should have actually came forward and told them to do this, being engineers and knowing the risk that could go with such a weak system. Next, I'll go into the better values that could have happened. So these engineers, like I said, are motivated by their idea that they would keep their jobs in the future and that they would make a lot of money. Those sort of personal values, when in reality they should have been motivated by public safety values and the public's values in general. They should have saw the Metrodome as a chance to make something beautiful, make something big and extravagant for the metropolitan area that people would still feel safe in and that people would enjoy. And they should have taken the values of public safety and seeing this as an opportunity to help the public instead of just help themselves and have personal gain. They should have seen the Metrodome as something that they could do to help that entire community, whereas instead they used it to help themselves. And if these better values had been the motivating causes, they probably would have put in better safety precautions in terms of large snow, put in more tools to help secure large amounts of snow on the roof, and that could have led to the collapse never even happening. And finally, some things that future engineers can definitely learn from this case. I believe the biggest one being that engineers should, one, be motivated by the public safety always, and when presented with a moral decision of public safety and public gain versus your personal safety and your personal gain, you should always choose the public. You should always choose the lives of the public and keeping them safe, making sure they feel secure in your builds and in your engineering and things like that. And another major decision, value that could be learned is that engineers should be able to have a backbone, basically, and then be able to go to these major companies and be able to tell them that they know what they're doing and know how to make this the most safe possible, and they know how to make something like the Metrodome safe for the public and tell them that it's going to cost this amount of money to do everything they need to, and then not settle for less and not settle for compromises such as not replacing an inner lining that's weak even though it should. Engineers should be able to tell major companies that they need to do this, this, and this, and not settle for anything less. So thank you for listening. I hope this was a good presentation. I hope you learned something, and thank you for watching.